50 minutes of your life is going to be that. It's all going to be good stuff. We're all going to be here together exploring the last part of Chapter 3. Now, guys, I do have to make a request, however. I've been getting some submissions on Blackboard that show that you're submitting stuff during class time. I'm going to ask you from here on out, please do not do your homework in this class during class time if I have not designated as a homework period. I really want this to be a time when you are engaging with me at the front of the room and you're engaging with each other as we talk. Please do not submit assignments during class time from here on out. Guys, just a reminder, if you have not yet submitted the economic systems exercise or online discussion, they're overdue. Some folks were having problems with uploads. See me after this class. We'll get you connected. We're going to remind you that after today, Monday, we're going to be starting a new chapter, but next Wednesday is going to be our first exam, and you all have lockdown browser, right? All right, fantastic. Guys, the stock game has technically already begun. Fear not. We're going to assemble into groups on Monday to determine how we're going to play the stock market. Here's the deal, guys. Every one of you in here is going to get a virtual $10,000 to play with. Actually, $100,000 to play with. And you're going to play the markets for the entire month of October. You may say to yourself, well, October has already started. That's okay. We're going to use historical data. How might you decide what to invest in, guys? If you had $100,000 to invest in the stock market, how might you decide what to invest in? What are your thoughts? What might be a viable strategy? Yes? What you know. For example, is there a particular product or service or industry that you're knowledgeable? Something you enjoy?
I'd probably stick to heavy trucks.
Heavy trucks. We always need them. Yes?
Try to find stock because like an equity stock is something that it's just like what that company's kind of worth at that point. Try to find something undervalued.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you know is set up well for the future. Profitable business, but at the time is undervalued.
Turn it into a karate move. You want to buy low and sell high.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. You didn't realize I was a master of martial arts, did you? If ninjas came into this room right now, nobody would get hurt. I would take care of all you guys. I promise. What else would be a reason you would pick a stock? Yes?
Well, I played a stock game last year, and I did a lot of research on Yahoo Finance before doing stuff.
Yahoo Finance is a good one. By the way, I think if I were in this classroom, I might be going after this guy like a free agent saying, will you be on my team? You've already played. How'd you do in the markets?
I gained $10,000 with my $100,000 started with.
10% rate of return. Killer. I'd ask Zach to be on my team. I'd want him on my team for sure. Who else has a reason why they would pick a stock? What's a brand that you like? What's a brand that you enjoy, Michael? What's a brand that you would invest in? Nike's a safe bet. They basically always make money. Good ideas, guys. Guys, please put your phones away. We're participating together today. Guys, so that's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about. Next big announcement on the 25th of October, the Friday after we get back from mid-semester break, we're going to have mentorship day. What's mentorship? If you had to say somebody is my mentor, what does that mean? If somebody's your mentor in life, what does that mean? Yes?
They show you the ropes and they guide you through whatever career path.
Exactly right. It's good to have a mentor. Mentors can do things like open doors for you. They can show you the ropes of a business. Here's the deal, guys. We are canceling all business classes on the 25th. You will have no business classes that day so that you will come to mentorship day. And here's the trick, guys. I'm going to be requiring everybody in this class to go to at least one session. Dr. Miko, in fact, if you have your laptops, I'm asking you to check your email right now for an email from Dr. Miko. It gives you instructions how to sign up for a session. Raise your hand if you're a management major. Okay, raise your hand if you're accounting. Raise your hand if you're undecided. Awesome. Guys, this is a great way to go into interest groups where you're going to meet young alums, people who have graduated within the last 10 years. We're going to tell you their story. We're having a session just for student athletes. We're having sessions for communications and criminal justice. It's a great way for you to meet alums who, I'll get that for you, just like with the speed of a ninja. You're going to be able to meet people who can show you the ropes. And here's the trick. If you choose not to go to one of these sessions, you got to write a paper. So it's a way better idea for you to write a paper or to go to a session than write a paper. So I'm asking you to sign up for a session and to go. Here's something I'll set up in Canvas to prove to me that you went to the session. I'm going to be asking everybody to use their smartphones to give a picture from that session. That will be your submission for the assignment. So you're going to prove to me that you went. If you have a conflict because of athletic competition, come and see me. This is a way to help get you into the career of your dreams. We left off talking about NAFTA. Now guys, what's NAFTA? NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement, and it started in the 90s. We left off talking about it. Who on this side of the room can tell me something about NAFTA? Oh, I know somebody can tell me. Oh, come on, please. We're going to randomly pick on somebody today. Francesco, what can you tell me about NAFTA?
It's an agreement between Mexico, America, and Canada about to change goods about among them.
Tariff-free trade. It's great. It sounds wonderful, guys. So we know that, hey, we can get from one country to the next without having to pay tariffs. On this side of the room, is there anybody who would have thought this was a bad idea in the United States? Who hated NAFTA? Yes.
Teamsters did.
Yeah, why?
Because they didn't feel that India was up to the standards that American DOT was.
So safety standards, big issue. If anybody doesn't know who the Teamsters are, they're the largest trucking union in the United States. Guys, who else in the United States was saying, we don't like this idea? Is it more expensive to, I'm going to ask by show of hands, is it more expensive to A, build a car in the United States, or B, build a car in Mexico? Who thinks it's more expensive to build it in the United States? Bingo! So who's going to be against NAFTA? Yes.
All the factory unions too.
People who work for the United Auto Workers are saying, this is a terrible idea, we're going to lose jobs. And guess what? A lot of people did. Companies, however, made lots of money. Now, our current president feels that we need to renegotiate these trade deals because he feels they're unfair to American labor. Time will tell if the tariffs pay off. Now, we also had something called the TPP, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership was essentially NAFTA for Asia. It was something that started under the Obama administration. It was killed by Trump. Now, here's the thought, guys. In the emerging economies of the world, who is the powerhouse? Beside the United States. It's China. So this was an opportunity for us to try to get more U.S. imports into China or exports from the United States into China. It failed because we were fearful that we were going to see even more economic drain from the United States. So there were a lot of the same opposition that we had to NAFTA came for the TPP. In terms of where we're going with global trade, guys, now the United States, don't make a mistake, we're still an economic powerhouse. We're still the biggest GDP in the world. But if I were a car company, man, I'd be looking at China. They have a growing middle class. They have lots of people. They have a powerful economy. India. Guys, when you think about India, what industries do you think about? Any industries jump to mind? Has anybody ever received a random phone call? So what industry am I talking about? Telemarketing and call centers. If you set up a call center, somebody that does technical support, in India versus the United States, anybody guess how much cheaper it is to set it up in India? Ben, what do you think? How much cheaper is it to set up a call center in India than it is in the United States? And I'm saying you're correct. It's one half the cost because labor is cheaper and so is land, so is resources. And we're also seeing, too, guys, something that's being outsourced all the time, and it's called medicine. We used to think about outsourcing just being factories. Get this, guys. We have radiologists in India and in Australia who are board certified in the United States. You break your leg, you need an x-ray, it gets read overnight, it might be read by somebody in India or Australia. Then we got Russia. Russia has crazy amounts of natural resources. What does Russia provide part of Eastern Europe with? Natural gas. Last 2 years ago, Russia was having a dispute with Ukraine, so in the coldest part of the winter, they turned off the gas pipeline. It gets cold in Ukraine in the winter. That is economic leverage. And Brazil is going gangbusters. It's jumped its way to being the 7th largest economy in the world. We're seeing tech, we're seeing finance, and it's a pretty cool place to live. In terms of China's growth, though, here's the biggest thing. I will ask you to tell me, If you were a company and you were thinking about expanding into other countries in the world, why is China such an attractive market? What do you think? Yes?
There's so many potential customers.
It's amazing. It's like there's just so many people. It's such a substantial part of the world's population. And here's another thing, too, guys, you may not realize. This is something that's very quietly happening in parts of the developing world. China's not the developing world. China's first world industrial nation. But in India and Africa, Facebook and Microsoft and Google are experimenting with floating internet access points. We're really talking, and I'm telling you the truth here, about blimps that are meant to go up over large swaths of those continents and to provide internet service to people who don't get internet. If I'm Facebook, if I'm Microsoft, if I'm Google, why am I doing that for free?
Because you just created that many more customers.
Exactly right. If I'm getting my internet through Facebook, I'll probably be a Facebook user for life. By the way, guys, I know that Facebook is no longer a cool social network for people under the age of 30, but can anybody tell me how many users Facebook has? Any guesses? What do you think?
I think it's more than 1 billion.
Oh, it's definitely more than 1 billion. Anybody have a guess?
It's about like half the world's population.
It's not there yet, but we're getting there. It's 2 billion people. How about that? I was so into it that my voice just cracked. There's 2 million people on Facebook. I can't believe it. It's really got me fired up today. 2 million people. But there are 2 million people. More people have Facebook than running water or indoor plumbing, guys. That's how big that company is. And what they're saying is we've got to get into the developing world because when these folks become empowered, we want them to purchase their stuff from us. So it's interesting, guys. We start talking about outsourcing. I want you to think about that word for a second. Will somebody say the word outsourcing? Actually, I want you to all say it with me. On the count of 3, we're all going to say the word outsourcing together. 1, 2, 3.
Outsourcing.
Wow, listen to that tone in your voice. Nobody said outsourcing. Like, that's great. No, outsourcing has a negative connotation. Why does outsourcing have such a negative connotation, Shelby? Why do we think so poorly about it? Any idea?
Because it doesn't give like us more money.
Yeah, it sounds like we're getting rid of jobs. That'd be like me coming into the room and saying, guys, I'm having a great day. I'm being forced into early retirement. I'm being downsized. Nobody's going to come in and start shaking their hand and say, woo, I'm getting fired. Outsourcing means, unless you really want to get fired. Although I will tell you, if you wanted to get fired, I will say I have fantasized more than once in my last job. If I were going to get fired, what I would do on my last day. Like the things you could do that you would not normally get away with. Like I think it'd be awesome if you had that kind of freedom. You could do whatever you wanted. Has anybody ever had a really crappy job? Raise your hand if you had. Have you ever fantasized about how you, what did you think about doing?
Being completely honest.
Yeah, we're being
cussing
honest
out
here.
my boss.
Say that again?
Cussing out my boss.
That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Tell exactly what you think. Like, be able to walk up to this person, you know what? You really are an idiot. You're lucky this company's running okay because it's not your fault that it's successful. Who else has ever had that fantasy about quitting a job? How did you want to quit?
I just wanted to be like, if my boss was like, I wanted to be like, go do this, and I was like, no. And then, I don't know, just like, flip some over.
I'm out of here.
Yeah.
How would you quit your job?
Probably throw ice cream at my boss or something.
That would be awesome. That'd be an awesome way to go out. There was a flight attendant, by the way, who quit his job. He hated his job. He was not treated well. So what he did, during the middle of a safety check-in, he basically cussed out all of the people in the plane, opened one of the emergency exits, activated one of the inflatable slides, grabbed a drink, chugged it, and went down the emergency slide. If you're going to go out in a blaze of glory, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. So anyway, outsourcing. Let's get back to the task at hand. The reason outsourcing has such a bad name is nobody wants to lose their job, but in reality, very successful companies outsource. For example, Felix, what is Apple's main job? What is Apple's main product? Yeah, absolutely. So if you're Apple, there are things that you probably hire other people to do. Apple is not an expert at cleaning their office buildings. They outsource that to another company. Apple might not even be an expert in accounting. They may have their own independent firm that audits them. So we outsource things all the time that are not our core functions. Sometimes, unfortunately, we outsource entire business. For example, do any of you love the brand Crocs? Who here still wears Crocs? It's okay to admit it. Nobody's setting judgment on you. In terms of Crocs, they outsourced their last factory as of last year. So no Crocs are actually made by the company anymore. They're all made by subcontractors. The last American-made Crocs got made last year. So Crocs are all made somewhere else now. But that's an example of how we can outsource an entire brand. It happens all the time, guys. So what are some of the pros and cons? Well, the pros are you can give a job that is tough to do to somebody else. You might have somebody who can deal with all your problems for you. Let me give you an example. In my last life, I worked for a technology company. This technology company would hire people who could write code for software, for mobile phone apps, you name it. And what they would do, they would hire these folks at particular locations when they were needed, and when they weren't needed, they got rid of them. So you got hired and fired. The main company, which was IBM, didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. They had somebody else do it for them. Here's some of the cons, guys. If you lose your jobs in your local area, some of the folks who may have really loved your brand may no longer love your brand. If you're living in Youngstown, Ohio, for example, you might not be thinking about a GM for your next car since the factory closed. Some of the other things, too, it can be hard to maintain quality when you outsource product to somebody else. I'll give you a great example. I'm not sure if this brand will mean anything to you at all. How many of you have ever been to a large, loud rock and roll show? All right, who'd you go see?
Korn.
Korn. Wow, heavy rock, man. I like it. Well, the bass player for that band, I would bet, was playing a brand of amplifier. The bass player's name is Feldy, and his amp was most likely an Ampeg. Ampeg was the first stadium amplifiers that were ever produced. They were amplifiers for bass guitar that were roughly the size of a refrigerator. They had 8 10-inch speakers, and if I had one in this room at half volume, all of you would need to leave the room because of how loud these things are. They were the icons of American rock and roll from the late 60s to today. Well, that company, Ampeg, got consumed by a larger company called Loud Incorporated, who offshored all of their manufacturing to Vietnam. The quality went through the floor, the sales dropped off, and almost every major endorser, big rock and roll stars, said, we're no longer using your brand because we can't rely on your stuff anymore. That's how outsourcing can hurt you if you offshore your key responsibility. So other things I will encourage you guys, by show of hands here, if you are willing to share, how many of you would consider yourself somewhat bilingual? You can speak more than one language. Guys, you guys are so prepared for the future. I am, as a man of a certain age, I wish I could speak a second language. Despite 4 semesters of French in college, I am terrible at speaking that language. I wish I were better at it. People who can speak multiple languages, however, have the future open to them. What are going to be the big languages for the 21st century beside English? Yes? You got it. Mandarin Chinese and Spanish. The way our demographics are changing in the United States, guys, by the time you are in the middle of your careers, in the 2030s and 2040s, in terms of demography of the United States, the largest demographic group will be people who identify themselves as Hispanic. So Spanish languages, Spanish-based languages will be a big part of the United States in the mid-21st century. So if you are learning those languages, you're going to be so prepared for that era of things. And speaking of this, guys, we're going to talk about medical tourism too. But before I get there, because we've been moving fast today, I even did ninja moves for you today. I don't do ninja moves for all my classes because I might hurt myself. But can I ask for one question or comment from each side of the room because we're moving quick? What would you like to ask? If you've never asked a question, I'd really love to hear from you. What would you like to know? Go for it.
What was your fantasy
For quitting the job? It goes something like this. Have you ever seen the movie The Big Lebowski?
Yes.
All right, raise your hand if you've seen that movie. That should be an unofficial assignment. Everybody has to watch that movie. But dude, I think what I would probably do if I really wanted to quit that last job, I would have not shaved the entire weekend, just been a little crazy looking, kind of like Joaquin Phoenix. I'd have come in a bathrobe and slippers, and I'd have had a lawn chair. And I think what I probably would have done is sat it down in my boss's office with a cooler next to me. I'd crack open a cold beer and have a drink. I'd offer him one. And when he says, "What are you doing?" I'm saying, "Well, you know what? I just decided it's time to do things a little different around this place." And I think I'd keep the dialogue going until he had security remove me, my lawn chair, and my beer. And I wouldn't even raise my voice. I wouldn't even be a jerk about it. I wouldn't be violent. It's nothing like that. I would just want it to be so bizarre and uncomfortable for him that he would have to have me removed. I'd offer the police beers too when they were taking me out the door, and I would probably scream something like "America" when I was leaving at the front door, something like that. Could change next week. Ask me again next week. It might be a different fantasy, but that one I think would be pretty epic. Don't you think? Yeah, and it'd probably be big fuzzy slippers too, like something really inappropriate. So that's a good question. Good question from this side of the room. Oh, come on, guys. I know you're dying to ask something. I'm in a mood today. Come on. If you haven't asked a question, I know you guys have a good question. What's the question you're dying to ask? It can be about anything. Help me out here, guys. We can't move forward until somebody asks a question. Yes, sir.
How should we dress for the mental day?
Casual. Nice but casual. Don't worry about wearing a tie or a formal outfit. I'd say a nice polo shirt. Probably not jeans. Something like an upgrade from jeans. But if you have nice jeans, those are okay too. If you guys were upperclassmen, I'd be telling you more formal because you're actually applying for jobs. Just look nice and semi-professional. That's a great question. See, that was easy. Well, guys, we're going to jump into a little video on medical tourism before we get to our review. Medical tourism is the idea that you go someplace outside of your home country for a medical procedure. And there are reasons why people do that, but I'm going to let the conversation, and that is, think about this for a second, how much you could possibly save by going somewhere else. We're talking gastric bypass, for example, which is a very popular surgery in the United States right now. $18,000 in the United States. India, $6,800. Heart bypass, which is something very common for most people when they get later in life. If we go $88,000 to $100,000 in the United States, $14,400 in India. Hip replacements, $33,000 in the States, $23,000 in the UK, $11,500 in Mexico. The list goes on. I'm asking you to consider this, guys. If you would draw out your cell phones and go to this address, I'm curious how many of you would travel outside your country for surgery. And if you would go to pollev.com/KentTalkin063, tell me if you would go outside of your home country for surgery. Yes, sir.
What's the is the surgery I don't know, like India's a lot cheaper for it? Is it just as effective though? Like the United States?
That's the question. That's the question. So
Cheaper is not always the best.
cheaper is not always better. We're going to give everybody a chance to respond here and see how many people would go outside their home country. For somebody who said yes, that they would go outside their home country for surgery, well, somebody who answered yes, tell me why. Ma'am.
Well, my friends are in Canada, we have free healthcare, but it can take like 6 months or a year or more to get surgery if you need it. So I have some friends that are really rich and they come here for surgery.
So would you, so have you known people who have gone outside their country because of the waiting period?
Yeah.
Okay, so waiting for resources. Anybody else who would travel outside of their home country for surgery? Yes?
Like financially, if it's better to go outside of the U.S., like if you do the research and it's backed up, then if it's financially better, then why not?
Okay, yeah, if it's trustworthy and reliable. Well, somebody who said, hell no, they would not go outside their country, tell me why they answered that way. Yes?
Because unless I was absolutely sure that the quality exceeded the care that you could receive, it seems like a bad idea to pay for, even though you're paying less, for a lower quality procedure that you then have to worry about traveling back, because that can be stressful on the body. And if you have major surgery, you got to figure out how you're going to stay until you recover, or you got to figure out how to transport yourself in some pieces.
Yeah, so follow-up can be difficult. Ben, you had your hand up too. What's your thought?
I was based off what he said, like the travel expenses too and everything like that. And plus, like if it's not as effective as the United States, say you go over here and get a hip replacement in 5 years or something, it's like you need it replaced again and you don't want to go back to say you go to the United States, it costs you even more money to get it replaced again.
fix something that was not done properly. Guys, here's one of the things too. After surgery, in addition to recovery, what is the biggest concern we have after surgeries? Anybody know? What kills people after surgeries? Infections. So if you go for someplace where you're traveling and the sanitary conditions are not verified, and by the way, when I say this, I'm not putting judgment on any other country. People in this country die all the time. By the way, guys, one of the leading causes of death in this country isn't heart disease or cancer. Well, those are leading causes, but one of the ones that goes along with that are medical errors. It happens in our country too. It's pretty interesting. There are some states in the southern United States with state-run healthcare. You know, you get healthcare provided because you're working for the state of I don't know, Georgia. And they will incentivize you to go to other countries for surgery because it is cheaper. So it's going to be interesting how this continues to see if it's something that becomes more of a trend as we continue. That being said, we are going to move in to our Chapter 1 through 3 review. Guys, before we jump into this today, I'm going to be moving fast. What I would like to actually have happen here, if you guys will help me do this, every time I ask a question, we're going to do it by row. So, for example, we're going to start with this being the first question. This will be the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. Well, I guess you know what I'm saying. We can alternate it between rows. That way every row gets a chance to answer. Keep in mind, guys, there are no points assigned to this, but this is a pretty good idea. This is a pretty good idea of what kind of test you can expect next week. Any questions before we get started? Okay. All right, to my right. The total amount of money a business takes in during a given period by selling goods and services. What is that? A is revenue, and that's correct. Row 1 on this side. If a business is operating and not making money, what's it operating at? A loss. Correct. Row 2 over on the far end. Which of the following is not one of the 5 environments of business? D is correct. All right, back to my side of the room. True or false? Over half of the executive workforce is male. It is false. It's female. Back to the other side of the room. The 5 factors of production include all the following except what? E is correct. All right, back to my side of the room. True or false? The U.S. is primarily an agricultural economy. That is correct. What kind of economy is it, by the way? We're not an agricultural economy. What kind are we? Primarily. Begins with an S. Say it loud. It's a service economy. All right, back to the other side of the room. True or false? According to our text, the U.S. has the highest standard of living in the world. That is false. Let's go back to my side of the room. People who are willing to gamble with large amounts of money have a high tolerance for? C is correct. Where are we at in the room, by the way? Because we're supposed to be going between groups here. So who was the last group to answer? All right. So are we back over? Michael, we're back on your side then. All right. So it was risk. And Michael and company, buying and selling goods and services via the internet is called what? B is correct. And we're back to the back row on this side. The study of how society employs resources to produce goods and services for consumption among various groups and individuals, with a concentration on the operation of a nation's economy as a whole. B is correct. All right, and we're back to the front of the room, I believe, and we're back to this side. What did Thomas Malthus call economics? It is the dismal science, indeed. This side of the room. When self-directed gain leads to social and economic benefits for the whole community, what do we call that? It is the invisible hand. Great name for a horror movie. Row 2 in the opposite side of the room. All or most of the land factories and stores are owned by individuals, not the government, and operated for profit. That is capitalism. All right, we're back to this side of the room. Keep it moving, guys. True or false? China is an example of a country with state capitalism. That is true. It does have state capitalism. We're back over to row 3, I believe, in the far side. Which of the following is not one of capitalism's 4 basic rights? It is correct. It's a right in our Constitution, but it's not a right of capitalism. All right, back to this side of the room. True or false, in a free market economy, a country's government determines how much of a product should be produced? That is false. All right, back to the opposite side. What determines the price of items in a free market? Say it real loud. C is correct. All right, back to this side of the room. When supply and demand have crossed over, what do we have? In the next to the last row on my side, what is it? Say it really loud. What are you saying B? Because it's correct. All right, we're back to the, I guess we're back to the front row over here. True or false? There's no such thing as perfect competition.
True.
That is true. Guys, you have to speak loud. I'm kind of hard of hearing. So we're back to this side of the room. A large number of sellers, actually we're back row on this side, a large number of sellers making similar products that consumers see as different. What is that? That is correct. All right, back to row 2 on the other side of the room. Which economic system is most likely to provide large amounts of government services?
D.
D is correct. And where are we at on this side of the room? Are we in row 1 or 2? All right, row 1. True, there are many incentives for workers and entrepreneurs to excel in a socialist economy.
False.
Correctamundo. All right, back to the other side. When the best and brightest leave a socialist country, what do we call it? Brain drain. All right, back to our side. The U.S. spends more money on healthcare than any other country in the world. Is that true or false? That is true. 1/5 of our GDP. Opposite side, an economic and political system in which the government makes almost all economic decisions and owns almost all the major factors of production. What do we call that? A is correct. In blank economies, the government largely determines what goods and services are produced, who gets them, and how the economy will grow. C is correct. The total value of final goods and services produced in a country in a given year is that gross domestic product, economic well-being, a lot, or gross diuretic product. GDP me ASAP. True or false? The U.S. GDP is approximately $5 trillion. Say it loud. Thank you. All right. When a person voluntarily leaves a job, what kind of unemployment are we talking about? We're talking frictional, just like me saying to my boss, I'm out of here. True or false? The unemployment rate is an accurate measure of how many people are really unemployed. That is false. Why is that, guys? What doesn't it tell us? Correctamundo. It doesn't tell us anything about the labor force participation rate. The general rise in the price of goods and services over time. What is that? Inflation. Very good. All right. CPI. What does that stand for, guys? Consumer Price Index. It is, because it has nothing to do with prunes. The 4 phases of long-term business cycles include all of the following but what? D is correct. Although we talk about economic busts, we don't often see them as technical terms because they're not. A recession followed by a short-lived recovery followed by another recession equals a double dip recession. Double dip cones are awesome. Ice cream's great. Double dip recessions, not so much. True or false? The federal government's efforts to keep the economy stable by increasing or decreasing taxes or government spending equals monetary policy. That's correct. What is it? That is correct. When the government takes in more than it spends, what do we have? If we take in more than we spend, we got a surplus, not a deficit. It's okay. That's why we're reviewing. True or false, guys? The U.S. is the second largest importing and third largest exporting nation in the world.
False.
It's false. And why is it false? We're the biggest importing nation in the world. True or false? The U.S. is not one of the top 10 countries in which to do business according to our text. According to our text. What do you think? Any thoughts? It's a true or false question. Just give it a guess, guys. False. It is absolutely true because Ireland is kicking our butts. What percentage of U.S. GDP, this is from one of the slides, what percentage of U.S. GDP is from exports? It is B. We're very low. Germany's doing way better than us. The largest holder of U.S. debt is whom? China owns more of our debt than anybody. True or false? If the total value of U.S. exports is less than U.S. imports, our country's operating at a trade surplus. What are we operating at then? A deficit. Yep. Selling products in a foreign country at lower prices than those charged in the producing country, and it's a bad practice. What are we talking about? We're talking about dumping. Yes, we are. All right, the lowest risk way of getting into foreign markets is what? D, licensing. Anybody can slap a Nike logo on a sweatshirt. A Taco Bell in Tokyo. What's that an example of? Franchising. Hey, who here can tell me something strange that you might find on pizza in Pizza Hut in Tokyo? I'm sorry?
Soy sauce.
Soy sauce, absolutely. What else? There was one other thing really strange. Hamburgers for sure, and eggs. Like pickled eggs sometimes. I can't even imagine that. Is this true or false, guys? Transformers were a big hit in Japan before they came to the U.S. They were a failure until they came here. All right, true or false? A strategic alliance is more risky than a joint venture. Say it real loud.
False.
It is false. Very good. The country making the most substantial investments in Africa. We talked about this conversationally. Who is it? You got it. It is China. True or false? When the dollar is trading for less, foreign goods are also less expensive. Correct. Which of these countries has been criticized for devaluing their own currency? China has been criticized for that. Yes, they have. Tariffs are a form of what? Trade protectionism. Very good. Okay, guys, what was the name of the car that they stuck seats in the bed of, or the truck, rather, that had the seats in the bed to get around trade tariffs? What was it? Subaru Brat. I brought up a new picture for you guys. Look at this beautiful car. It's an amazing example that did not rust to pieces. I do have to point out, though, look at this, guys. The headrests are actually above the cab. If that thing rolls, your head's coming off. It's absolutely a crazy thing. The trade relationship between the U.S. and Cuba could be best described as what? It is an embargo. A regional group of countries with a common external tariff, no internal tariffs, and coordinated laws to facilitate exchange among members. What do we call that? It is a common market. All right, traveling outside your home to receive treatment is? It is medical tourism, A. Guys, that is your review. So I will be sending that to you guys sometime later today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's going to be sunny, but it's getting colder, so enjoy.